I don't know whether many of you have probably heard some of my presentation before, but I will not stay up here and just introduce somebody else. So I will give you a short update on Saniona to start with. And then I also will try to bring some new perspectives into this presentation for the company, for you to think about. So we'll talk a little bit more about our lead programs and how we see this program can be developed in future. And then it's time to Initiator Pharma, a company we participate in formation here in 10th of May. And I think then you will have the chance to meet the management today, and they will present the case for themselves. So just shortly about status. So for those of you who have not heard about Saniona before, then I can say that we have a team of scientists which are world-class within ion channels, and this leads to a broad platform addressing a lot of different indications. So we are active in CNS, we have pain products, we are active in metabolic diseases and in inflammatory diseases and autoimmune diseases. And then we have right now 9 active programs, of which 5 are financed through partnerships or grants. So we're only supporting 4 internally based on our investors' accounts. So a top-class science, a strong pipeline of products, and a lot of collaborations. And this means that we generate revenues and that basically operational costs are covered by our deals. So that when we have raised money in the stock market, those money will be used for clinical development of our internal compounds. So what happens this year? So we have made 3 deals so far this year. One in January with Upsher-Smith. Upsher-Smith is going to finance all in relation to this research program for neurological diseases. We will then have up to $30 million in milestones and royalties on product sale. So a very fair, very standard deal. So something wrong here?
Yeah, just put it up.
Is better?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Then we, in February, entered into a collaboration with Medix, a Mexican pharmaceutical company, who are developing tesofensine and Tesomet for obesity. And then in March, we got a grant from Michael J. Fox Foundation from Parkinson Research, who are then essentially funding all our costs related to our Parkinson disease research program. On the pipeline side, also a lot of things have happened. In April, we entered into phase 2 clinical studies with Tesomet for type 2 diabetes. And then we have informed at around Christmas that we are going to start a phase 2 program on cocaine addiction together with University of Pennsylvania. And we said at that time that it's going to be during the first half. And right now I can see that we are at 1st of June, so it's probably going to start anytime soon. Then we entered into this deal with Medix, and Medix, at the time we did the deal with them, they said they would like to start a phase 3 study for tesofensine in obesity in Mexico this year. And they are working on it right now. So we hope that this also will come up and running at the end of the year. And then May 10, we announced this spin-out with Initiator Pharma, where the CEO and CSO is here today, where you can meet them. And come back to that one a little later. So a lot of things have happened since our listing at the Axetalk in April 2014. At that time, we were a discovery company. Now we are moving into phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials. We listed the company now at First North Premier here also in May, and the intention is to take the company to the main market later this year. So we see this as a stepstone for doing that. Yeah, so what is the inflection points going forward? First of all, initiation of phase 2 studies for cocaine addiction. Then we will report to the market when we have recruited the last patient in the phase 2 study for Tesomet. And then the market will know that we can come with top-line data about 4 months after that point. So that's primarily the reason for doing so. And then we will initiate we hope to report to initiate phase 3 studies for tesofensine, and then there will also be updates of other programs. So you see we have a quite broad platform in a minute. And then we will progress also then on partnerships. Then first of all, there is the Initiator Pharma. We will report when we have an answer for Lexacea, this call for general meeting for distribution of shares, and then we can go for an IPO sometimes in autumn, I hope. Yeah, and Forward then small cap, Nasdaq small cap later this year. So here you see the pipeline, and the top product is for obesity, where Medix starts phase 3 this year. And on the second, you have our program, which was sponsored by us for type 2 diabetes, Tesomet, where we are in phase 2. And then we have this cocaine product which could start phase 2 also this first half year of this month. And this is going to be sponsored by funds in the US. Then we have 3 research programs funding ourselves, one for neuropathic pain, one for inflammatory bowel diseases, and one for schizophrenia. And then 3 programs which are sponsored by partners. So Atlas Ventures and Biogen sponsor our Atlas Ataxion program in a company called Ataxion in the US, which is a single purpose vessel. And then we have the neurologic program together with Smith, and then the Parkinson's disease, where we actually have all rights based on funding from Parkinson from Mike J. Fox Foundation. So then a little bit about perspectives of our lead program, Tesomet and Tesofensine, which provide a unique weight loss. This is these compounds, Tesofensine has shown in phase 2 studies that you can get up to a weight loss of 14-15% after 48 weeks. This is more the double than most of the commercial available products today. And also it's competitive to surgery, and that's why we think that it can be used also for type 2 diabetes. Now, obesity is an increasing problem, and a part of this is because of change in lifestyle. So we are sitting much more down than we used to do for about 50 years ago. We are also having Coca-Cola culture, Burger Kings and snack foods, for there's a problem among teenagers. And you see in poor countries, then they are substituting vegetables with fat, because fat is a much cheaper food ingredient than vegetables. And therefore we see a growing population, not only in numbers, but also in weight. And obesity is going to be a huge problem. We're seeing in some countries 30% of the population are obese now. And the obesity is not necessarily a problem by itself, but it goes also to your organs, so there will be fat in the liver. And this leads to a metabolic syndrome such as type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, fit liver på svenska, which is, when it's bad, called NASH. And then there are other indications, high blood pressure, cancer causes some of these problems. And what over time, type 2 diabetes lead to heart attack, stroke, blindness, food ulcer, amputation of limbs. And when you're looking at fat liver, or fit liver, and NASH, then it can lead to cirrhosis, it can lead to liver failure, and liver cancer. So cirrhosis is the same as skrumpelever when you're drinking too much alcohol. So also a very bad indication. And what are we doing now? And what can Tesomet do? It can regulate appetites, and it increase burn in the body. And this dual combination which leads to this dramatic weight loss. And it's so high that we think that it can normalize blood sugar in type 2 diabetes, and also we think that it can improve liver function and stop the progression of diseases in NASH. So there are some interesting indications. Right now we are working, and then we think that this product has a very benign profile compared to other products in the market. Right now we are working on obesity together with Medix, but they will develop it for Mexico and Argentina. We will get double-digit royalties on product sales, and then we will have the right to use these data for the rest of the world. We are making a phase 2 study on type 2 diabetes, where we are in Germany right now, where we're getting a readout to see whether we can improve normalized blood glucose level. And then, but there are other indications you can see. Fat liver is an obvious one. We think that it's a very hot area. There's a 10 to 24% of American population have what we call fit liver today. And 9 million patients have NASH, and there is no product out there. So everybody are developing in this area right now. But we think that our product could be at least as good as the existing other products, and also have a very interesting safety profile, besides that people are losing weight. Also, binge eating is interesting. Now we're talking neurological diseases. Binge eating is an indication where people are eating a lot of food in a few days a week, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, much more than normal. and they are kind of out of control, is considered as a severe neurologic disorder which should be treated. So therefore there's money for this kind of thing. And there's only one product on the market, and it's not very effective, and it has a not a very favorable profile. So it comes with a huge abuse liability. It's a product from Shire, approved last year, and it also has cardiovascular side effects, and people can go into psychosis. So it's not something you want to take. Another one is Prader-Willi syndrome, for instance, also neurologic disease. This is an orphan drug. It's a rare genetic disorder where patients have mental disabilities and other stuff, but they are hungry all the time. So they're eating all the time. And they are 130 kilos, 140 kilos in the age of 15, 16 as teenagers, and they typically die in the age of 30, so very young, because they are getting this life-threatening obesity. And there's no products to help these people. And here we think we can regulate appetite and help these people and get them the health improvement. And it's an area where there's no product, there's an orphan drug, you can proprietary review, so with a relatively small program, you can get quite fast to the market. So this is also, from a small company like us, at least, a very interesting indication. So this is just the possibilities you can see from one of our lead products. And you say we are only time to speak of this one because now we go to Initiator Pharma. And before coming to them, I'm just saying a little bit about our strategy. We have a lot of programs. We have 9 active programs. We have a platform for about 16 programs within our ion channel programs. And then we also have a number of products within monoamine reuptake inhibitors. And so we have commercialized this through early stage research collaborations. Then we are taking some of those programs, develop them internally before we out-license to third parties. And then we do these spin-outs. And we have done 2 of those, one with Ataxian, financed by Atlas Ventures and Biogen, and now Initiator Pharma, which will get its own listing and come to AxoTarget. And the intention here is, we could say, Klaus Olesen is the CEO, coming now, and Ulf Simmers is the CMO, and Dan Peters, a Swede, actually an inventor of these compounds, and then Michael Thompson is a very experienced clinician. And Ulf, he made some pharmacology work on the compounds from Dan, and they came to us and said they would like to make a deal with us about this and develop it. And we said, well, I think actually we should try to do it this way because this will be interesting for Swedish shareholders. And he can now explain a little bit what he has found. And management have 40%, Saniona 60%, and the intention is from us to, and then we have the Initiator Pharma has acquired 3 programs from us in monoamine reuptake inhibitors. They are family together. It's based on the same inventor, Swedish inventor. One is relevant for atrial dysfunction, one for pain and depression. And we intend to distribute our shares in this company to our shareholders. And in Denmark we have prior consent, which means from the Danish tax authorities, which means that we can distribute it as an extraordinary dividend with insignificant tax consequences for the Danish shareholders. And for Sweden, we have applied for Lex Asea, and if approved, then it will be tax-free immediately. So for there will be no immediate tax consequences for our Swedish shareholders. Of course, when you sell the shares later on, you will be taxed. So this is what we're doing, and we don't have an answer yet, but I don't see why we should not get it, I would say. And I hope to get it over the summer, and then we can call for the general meeting, and then we will be ready to IPO the company after the summer holiday. That's the intention. Okay, let me introduce you to Klaus Olesen, CEO.
Okay, thank you. And I'll also bring on the stage Ulf Simonsen, which has been introduced already by Thomas. So please come up here, Ulf. While they're changing the presentation, let me start saying that we really appreciate you taking the time to come and hear our presentation today. This is not a roadshow pitch, so we will not include a lot of numbers on budgets and how much we're expecting to raise. But it's more introduction to what we actually want to work on. And from the 3 programs that Thomas pointed out, we're actually going to talk about the erectile dysfunction project today and how we see it and what we actually have of data already and how we're going to bring it forward. So I will give the word to Ulf for the scientific presentation, and then we will follow up a little bit more about the company and how we are planning to set the company up. So,
Well, now it's on. So thank you very much. I'm going to talk about erectile dysfunction. It's a disease which has a severe overlap with cardiovascular disease. So that means that the man has an inability to obtain an erection and to conduct an intercourse. It affects a lot of people, and what people think is that this pill is the answer. Can you hear me now? Yeah. That this pill is the answer, Viagra, which is an inhibitor of phosphodiesterase 5, and they've been developed like 7 to 8 other drugs which will come or are on the market of these types of drugs. However, it's not sufficient in many patients, and therefore we are coming in with a new concept and a novel treatment of erectile dysfunction. Just to look at data concerning the effect of sildenafil. It has been evaluated by Hartmut Post, who has a big clinic in Hamburg, private clinic, where he looked at mixed populations of people with erectile dysfunction, or patients with erectile dysfunction in his clinic, 3,000 patients. And you can see here in a mixed population, there's an effect in 82% of the patients overall. But if you look at the heart parameters, that you actually get an erection, that you're able to have an intercourse with your wife or woman, then you can see it's only effective in 66%. And if you go for diabetes, where there is an ever-growing population of patients, you can see that less than half of the patients will have benefit from using a PDE5 inhibitor. Okay. So if we look at the number, erectile dysfunction affects more than 150 million men worldwide, and in 2025, more than 300 million will be affected. So there's a big market, and in diabetes, it's as Thomas mentioned, it's a rapidly growing disease, both in prevalence and incidence. So it means there's a large number of patients and men which will develop erectile dysfunction and have no benefit from phosphodiesterase type 5 inhibitors. So in metabolic syndrome, in diabetes, only 30 to 40% will have an effect of the phosphodiesterase type 5 inhibitors. And so if we think of the numbers of non-responders, it will be more than 100 million patients within the next 10 years. What's the science behind the novel treatment? If you look into how is erectile function or erection, how does it take place, then you can think you have an imagination picture of your partner or whatever, or you smell something, you have a visual impression, you see some, or a tactile that you've been touched somewhere in the body that will reach the cortex, is processed, and reach the integrative centers in the brain that will increase dopamine and decrease serotonin. When dopamine is increased, it will activate a pathway which goes down in the spinal cord and activates nerves reaching the erectile tissue, and that will increase the blood flow to the penis and lead to erection. The difference with the PDE5 inhibitors, these are functioning in the erectile tissue. In contrast, dopamine is increased at 3 levels, both in the brain, in the spinal cord, and in the erectile tissue. So the drug which we used, dopamine is released from the nerves, and we inhibit the reuptake of dopamine. So we increase the presence of dopamine at the receptors, both at the central level, which will initiate the erection, and in the peripheral tissue. So it will work at 3 levels. The other 2 drugs which we have, which I'm not going to mention much more about, are also inhibitors of the monoamine transporters, but they have one of them more selectivity for the uptake of serotonin. So that will not have effect on erectile function, but for instance on depression
or neuropathic pain. So what is unique about this drug here, it is that it's mainly an inhibitor of the dopamine reuptake. If you look in a rat and measure the pressure in the penis of the rat, what we can observe is when we inject the drug here, that shortly after there are coming spontaneous erections. So it's initiating the erections, and that can be a problem in patients affected by diabetes, that the neural pathways are affected as well as the peripheral tissue. So it will have an effect there. In addition, when we add it together with sildenafil, there's a large pronunciation, there's much more maintained pressure in the penis. But this here is sufficient to obtain an erection. So that's why we know it's effective. And in severe cases, we can combine it with sildenafil and get even better effect. There's a huge data pack on this drug candidate. So that's de-risking also, or lowering the risk for the development of the drug. And I have worked in this field here since an American colleague introduced me to it in Spain 20 years ago with erectile dysfunction. I've seen the introduction of Viagra, and I'm convinced also that this drug here, at least for all the non-responders, will be much better than just developing a new PDE5 inhibitors. And I'll give the word to Klaus for concerning the further development.
So here's a slide again of the assets that we purchased from Saniona a few weeks ago. And so it is included a data package, and it's included, you have said we have 3 patents, and it's 3 assets. And as Thomas pointed out, and Ulf, it's one against erectile dysfunction, it's a depression, and it's a neuropathic pain product that we're looking at. But for this, we are, as I said before, we just focus on erectile dysfunction. So what is the vision and the mission of the company? Well, the vision for us, of course, is to make a new treatment, a new novel treatment for treating erectile dysfunction, for improving the quality of life for the men and also for their partners. It's really important to say this is not just about having fun on a Friday night. This is actually something that really means something in life. We can see that people that are not having a sexual life actually have a tendency to commit suicide. They have a higher death rates of other diseases as well. So it's not just about, as you, in Swedish you would say, kalas, it's also about health, for the general population. So there's a lot of economic risk associated to ED. The mission of the company is then more with the other products, the assets that we bought in, is actually to expand in the scope of the company. So we're still working with some of the same targets, the monoamine transporters. And actually, so we want to work with these diseases. But for now, we're actually focusing on ED because we think it's important not to spread us out too much and burn too much money on different things. So how is the initiator set up? Well, how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to be a very virtual setup. So meaning we're not going to have any office, we're not going to have any laboratories. And then there was a question earlier to Peter, there was an overlap between companies. Actually, we're all part-time in the company. So there's no full-time, and we adjust our working time according to the expertise and the task at hand. So we will have a low cash burn. We will rely on outsourcing. So all the chemistry, all the safety, all the data we will do, and all the safety pharmacology will be outsourced to CROs. And we will engage in a commissioned research agreement with Aarhus University, where we have the facilities to do a lot of these safety pharmacology studies and the ED that Ulf's lab is representing, and this is world-class science there. And that's coming to the next one, the top-class science team. So actually, as Ulf said, he worked with this for 20 years, and I will introduce some more of the partners later in the management of the company. And then we also have extensive clinical development expertise within the management of the company. So one of these charts of the organization of the company, and of course we have the board of directors, and then we have the management team. And here you see actually the 4 people in work presently in the company. Besides myself and Ulf, it's Dan Peters, who was also mentioned, who's the chemist, medicinal chemist who developed these products. And then it's Michael Thompson, who has extensive experience in clinical development and has taken many projects through, but I'll come back to it. Then down below that we have the external CROs. We have the 3 partners, the AU, we have the CROs for doing the API and CMC development and manufacturing. And then we have for the safety that we need for conducting clinical trials. On top of that, we actually have identified two potential members of the board, and one of them is probably known to you, Magnus Persson, who's in a few of the boards in the companies listed on First North and on Aktietorget as well. And another Swede is Peter Holm, who is a patent attorney with Højbjerg in Denmark and Sweden. And I put the Danish flag because we probably also need a Dane in the company since we are an AS, but we have found some really qualified candidates, so we have not really looked at where they're from. So to get a bit more outline of the people who are we on the team. And myself, I started my career as a research scientist at the university. I'm a structural biologist by training, so I have worked a lot up with transporters, which are membrane proteins. That's what I've done through my academic career. So I have a lot of expertise in this and looking for drugs and interaction assay and so on. And then besides that, I've been involved in the founding of two companies, Picovery, which is an antifungal company still based in Copenhagen, still running. And then I last year was a founder of NMD Pharma for treating neuromuscular transmission diseases. That could be like myasthenia gravis or ALS or other diseases like this. And I've done some different papers, as you can see as well. But I will just put a little bit more focus on Michael Thomsen here in the bottom part of the slide. So it says that Michael is a serial entrepreneur. He's been involved in many companies, and he's been heading the clinical development, the preclinical and the clinical development. And he's a really important asset in a company like ours because we have to do everything ourselves to reduce cost, and we also need to find the one who's the real guy to do it. And Michael is the guy. He's from the north part of Jutland where it's really dark, but he moved to Copenhagen and he's been working there ever since. And he's a really hard-working man, and he has a lot of success, and there have been some nice exits on some of his companies. So besides the management of the company, we also think it's really important that we interact with key opinion leaders within the field of ED. And here on the list, I said Scientific Advisory Board, but it's actually people that we are communicating with on a regular basis on how to actually conduct clinical trials, especially the phase 2. And it's also what is the measurement point? What's the endpoint that we're going to measure? Well, it's not so difficult to think about what the endpoint could be for erectile dysfunction, but we still need to put it into a protocol later on. And one of the people, there's another Swede here, Professor Karl-Erik Andersen, who's working at Aarhus University and is living in Lund. He's one of the founders of the ED field and has been a great help for us in discussion of where to take this program. And then Julian Allard, who's previously with Pfizer, was involved in development and had been involved heavily in the Viagra and the development of the new products that have subsequently followed Viagra. So now is the slide that I put up. So you see I only put years. I didn't put the start date because, as Thomas said, we are now in the process of trying to get the prospects and things ready and getting in with Skatteverket in Sweden so we can list sometime in the fall. But this is an outline of the clinical development plan that we set up for ED. So we actually have to do some more pharmacology, and then at the same time we will start producing the composition of matter, so the compound, the active ingredients, and we will start doing the safety pharmacology. And then subsequent to that, after 18 months, we're actually ready to conduct the first human trial. So that's going to be the safety trial, which only will rely on safety. And then we'll, after 3 years and 3.5 years, we'll be ready to enter the clinical phase 2, where we'll have a proof of concept. So we'll actually show that this new novel treatment of ED will work. So why will we succeed? Well, there's a clear unmet medical need for these patients, as Ulf pointed out. So even though we think that Viagra is helping the patients that we need, there's a lot of patients, and we saw the numbers early on. So it's more than 100 million people who cannot get help today, or in 2025. So there's a huge market there, and you don't need to address them all, but if you just get half of them, it's still 50 million patients. That's a very large market. So we actually start with the compound that Ulf showed you. There's a lot of data on these compounds. So there's been generated a lot. So we don't need to start doing a lead optimization of the compound, which is often the really big cost in drug development, is in making new chemistry. So we have a compound which is suitable for oral administration. There's as I said, a strong de-risking thing that we have put in behind. And we can become the first line of treatment for these non-PD5 inhibitors. So the one who's not getting any help today, the option they have today is actually either they try to give them more of the Viagra pills, the sildenafil, they give them more. If that doesn't help, they're not doing anything. Then they can get a surgical implant, so where they have a pump, so they can get an erection by using a pump and pump up the penis. And that's, of course, a very big thing for a man to get a surgery like that performed. So we think that this is for sure the new first line of treatment for these non-responders. We have strong IPR positions for these. I didn't mention the numbers, but we have patents running time for composition of matter until 2029. And we are looking into that, how we can actually get more, not second medical use, but how we can get administration patents and dosing and so on. And then we, as we hoped I showed you in the slide, we have an efficient management team and an efficient cost setup. And that will be more of these details, of course, later on when we start presenting the numbers that we are looking for. And what I think is really, really nice about this project is that we can actually have a proof of concept within 3 to 4 years. Peter showed you a number early on with oncology, how much a candidate with a proof of concept in phase 2 is. And that's a big number. So actually we're not that far away from having a proof of concept in phase 2. And that's a fairly fast track. So thank you for your attention. And I hope very much that we'll see some of you for the meetings when we present more in details. And please feel free to send us an email. I have cards here. Our homepage is not running yet. We had to prioritize a little bit what to do. And as you see, the name of the pillar is hopefully EPED 2015. So we'll see if it's on the market in some time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Can you tell us once again, for how long have you 4 founders worked on these assets or this project that Initiative Pharma is?
Probably Ulf's answer that you started there.
I started back in 2011, so it's taken, when we start with the science, to say something.
Okay.
Well, you said you have a efficacious, or you think you have an efficacious drug candidate. I didn't really understand how much data do you have to back that up? I understand the need. You're addressing a group that cannot be treated properly with existing products, but what kind of preclinical data do you have to know the efficacy of your compound?
What we have is based on animal studies, to make it short.
And how strong are those models? What can you say about the risk level?
They are state-of-the-art model for it, and we have also presented the data after we finished with this package. We present that to Julian Allard, who is the former research director of in Pfizer Sandwich. Now has his own company, and he proposed some additional studies, but he supported definitely or approved our findings. So.
Okay, time is running out. You presented 2 companies in the time of 1, so I think we will.
Maybe one question for Saniona. I think it's. I mean, the field of weight reduction is obviously very large and tremendous potential, but it's also a field with a history of failure, and people. Now we talk about the weight reduction. Your programs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what can you say about the risk levels of your obesity, your weight reduction products? Why do you think the risk level is lower than in the field in general? There's a perception in the market that weight reduction products are dangerous, scary.
So, first of all, about effect and side effects of this compound. It has already been tested in 1,600 patients. And it has proven to be well tolerated both in the elderly and in obese patients. So there is a full clean tox access on tesofensine. The only thing we saw in relation to tesofensine was an increase in heart rate of 8 beats per minute. And this, I don't think is dangerous, but it constitutes a regulatory problem if you want to introduce it in US and in Europe. Yep. Because there you will then require very large phase 3 clinical trials, and just 1 or 2 patients out there coming out, then you may get into troubles. And so just by coincidence, that could be difficult. Medics will develop it now in South America, in Mexico and Argentina, and there they are having products which amphetamine-like products and other stuff, which are not allowed or not taken off the market in US and Europe. And here it will be seen as a very safe drug. So that's why I think that this tesofensine as standalone therapy will be useful in South America as substitute to the existing product there. When it comes to Tesomet, then we have this increase in heart rate, and what we have seen in animal studies is that we can blunt this increase in rats and still have the high efficacy on weight loss in obese rats. And we have also seen that we can blunt the increase in heart rate in volunteers in phase 1. And we know why we see an increase in heart rate. It's related directly to a mechanism of action. It's really not a side effect. It is an on-target effect, which is related directly to the serotonin. And we are then balancing it out, and we can titrate to it to get it out. The only, you could say, side effect. So we know we have a very effective drug, and we know the adverse effect profile of the compound is clean, and the only thing what we can see, we can manage it with metoprolol. That's how we see it.
Thank you.
And then I would say, and that's perhaps also why I would like to address it a bit, because I indicated here there are other indications to go for. And so it might be that we say, oh, it's going to be a very large study to get to type 2 diabetes. And it's going to take a long time before shareholders will get a return on their investment. And that's why also we're looking at other indications. And one is binge eating, one is Prader-Willi syndrome, as I showed you before. These 2 indications are large. Binge eating affects 1 to 5% of the population. And the only products out there is an amphetamine-like product, which has a huge abuse liability and all sorts of other products. So in these indications, it's a completely different ballgame. And that's, you could say, if you think it's going to take too long, then there are other ways to get this product to the market faster and cheaper.
Vi har en fråga från publikum.
Thank you. Just one question to Initiator. What is the financial situation? Presumably, once we get the shares, you will also come with a little invitation to finance the studies, or how does it work?
Yeah, so what we have done is that we founded the company together with Saniona. So we made a spin-off, and actually right now the only money is in the company is what was there when we founded the company. So that is why right now we're all working free, volunteering, trying to put all this together so we can list on the Actitor later in the year. And actually you can say, why would you do that? Well, we actually do it because we think this is a really good case for success later on. So we're looking for that thing that's going to happen for us when we bring the product through the clinical development and have a proof of concept in phase 2.
But we can expect to be asked for finances presumably quite soon after the listing, or?
Yes.
Ja, vi köpte oss några extra minuter, men nu är det slut. Tack så jättemycket.
Ja, tack för att du kom.